Our family on our mom's side has a deep Montana history, especially stemming from Butte and Helena. And we are so proud. One of the things we are most proud of is to call ourselves Montanans. At Up Top Clothing, they have Montana-made and Montana-branded clothing for both men and women. Their Montana Till I Die collection is one of my favorite collections anywhere in the clothing world. And you can shop online and get the Montana Till I Die collection and all the other great gear that Up Top Clothing makes delivered right to your doorstep. Visit teamuptop.com. And if you use the promo code SKYLINE15, you're going to get a discount on all your online ordering. Teamuptop.com, Up Top Clothing, reminding you to take a step back and enjoy them. What's up, everybody? Colter Nuanez, Brooks Nuanez. Skyline at 10. It's our 10th anniversary, and we're into the meat of it now. We're in the heart of football season. We also have top 10 countdowns regarding football. We did our top 10 teams a couple weeks ago. Now we got our top 10 players, but we're actually going to break it up into 3 different countdowns. We're going to do our top 5 quarterbacks of the last 10 years during the Skyline Sports era. That's today. Then we'll be doing our top 10 offensive players that aren't quarterbacks. That'll be next week. And then we'll do our top 10 defensive players from across the board of the last 10 years. That'll be here in a couple weeks. So it's been very fun putting these together. Brooks, I think that when you look at this football, I thought women's basketball was relatively easy to get to like the top 8 of the top 10, and then there was about 4 others that were in the mix for those last 2 spots. I thought men's basketball was pretty difficult. There was about half a dozen guys that were surefire, and then like 25 guys that could have filled in the last other 5 or 6 spots. Football, I actually thought this was pretty easy as well. I mean, I just did this right off the top of my head. It took like 20 minutes to get it at least broadly to you, and then we just kind of tweaked it a little bit. So I think that says a lot about when you are a transcendent talent who also puts it all together. It's pretty easy to see. You stand out quite a bit in the Big Sky Conference.
It is, and in basketball, there's been a little bit more of the transfer up, transfer laterally, the one and done. The portal has been more of a story in basketball for longer than it has football. Now it's becoming a thing in football. But it's a little less common as far as some of the guys we're going to talk about through all these lists, offense and defense. They were high-level players that just somehow found their way to the Big Sky Conference, and they weren't cherry-picked out. And at the very end, a lot of these guys we're talking about at the top had 1 year later because they all grad transferred. So we did get to see them at the next level be successful. So I think that kind of goes hand in hand. And also, there's some guys that won mostly, generally. That was the hard part of men's basketball, is that there was some guys who didn't win very much who were really, really good players, that argument became a little bit more nuanced. I think in football, the guys that have tremendous impact oftentimes are leading really, really good teams who are, not only flashy but memorable.
The thing that's interesting, though, about the quarterbacks is this, twofold. We're actually here to dispel a few preconceived notions. One, the Big Sky Conference has been pinned as and spun as a quarterback league since the 1AA division was created back in 1978. That was absolutely true through the 1980s and through the 1990s. Tons of great quarterbacks that came through the league, and those quarterbacks were directly associated with Big Sky Championship success, playoff success, national championship success, whether it was the guys at Idaho like John Freese and Doug Nussmeier, Dave Dickinson at Montana, the great quarterbacks at Boise State, the great quarterbacks in Nevada, all of those various powers, Kelly Bradley at Montana State. Then that remained true through the 2000s with the great run that Eastern Washington had. But actually, in the Skyline era, best and most talented quarterbacks have not been associated with the best teams in the Big Sky. The Big Sky during our Skyline era has actually been way more ground and pound, way more defensively oriented, and so much of that's because of the pace that first North Dakota State and then South Dakota State has set. That's how they've won. That's how a lot of the powers within the Big Sky have gravitated towards this. So this is not just the great quarterbacks from the Big Sky champions. In fact, many, if not most of the guys we are about to talk about did not win Big Sky championships or won one Big Sky championship. Weber State won 5 Big Sky championships in 6 years. There's no Weber State quarterbacks on our list because Weber State was winning in a different fashion.
Yep.
Southern Utah won 2 Big Sky Conference championships. There's no Southern Utah players on this list. North Dakota won a Big Sky championship. There's no North Dakota players on this list. Cal Poly won 1 Big Sky title. That was with Andre Brodus. That was before the Skyline era. There is one Cal Poly guy who we'll mention. But this is actually more of an argument of not who had the best legacy or the best winning pedigree as much as who was just the most talented guy, who was the biggest baller at quarterback. The top three, there's crossover when it comes to winning and talent. Yeah. But a lot of the guys we're about to mention are just straight up dudes who are just unforgettable to watch as talents.
Yeah, they were at the top of the league. So, it's hard to win the league.
Especially with the unbalanced schedule.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a different argument than it is with like basketball to say that in basketball, if you don't win in the tournament, and we had one exception on the men's side. But pretty much it was, the best players and the best teams. This is a little bit different, but these were still teams that maybe at one point in their career they were going 500, but there were still teams that they were, worth flirting with greatness. I mean, I think across the board there were teams that you could definitely argue were at the very least teams that were memorable.
No doubt. All right, let's get to our honorable mentions first. Our Skyline at 10 is probably presented in part by Up Top Clothing. Up Top Clothing, legendary brand helping us present to you legendary athletes. Right now at Up Top Clothing, you can get a discount if you shop online, teamuptop.com. Use Skyline15 at checkout, and you'll get 15% off any and all online orders. TeamUpTop.com, Up Top Clothing, reminding you to take a step back and enjoy the moment. This is in no particular order, but here's the guys that we just threw out there that we thought at least deserved mentioning, but that were really not considered truly for the top 5. But certainly if we had a top 10 or somewhere around there, they'd be in there. But certainly guys that picking the brains of fellow Big Sky Conference followers and just from our memory banks, the guys that I think at least worth mentioning. We'll start with Dalton Sneed at Montana. He sort of helped re-jump the program at Montana. They had a tough year his first year. They had a great year his second year. Sneed's got a lot of juice. He's a really competitive guy. He runs and guns with the best of them. And he's just kind of right outside that group, but he was a good player, and I think he meant a lot to what Montana needed to do early on in Bobby Hauck's second tenure.
I thought that was, those are a good team that, his last year, good team, but not great team. And I thought he made them have a chance to be great.
That team, if things go differently, and who knows how things can go, but if he doesn't get hurt against Sac State and then isn't hurt against Montana State when they played in Bozeman and then at Weber in the playoffs, maybe it goes a little different because that team had a lot of juice. I mean, they were rolling offensively. Samari Torrey, Sammy Akim, Marcus Knight, that's a pretty good offensive trio to pair with Dalton Sneed.
Definitely.
They scored 73 in a playoff game, but then they scored 10 in a playoff game.
Yeah, and I'm never a big asterisk guy. You know that. I pretty much say that across the board. But that weather that happened in Weber in the quarterfinals was brutal. I mean, it's just a bad draw.
Well, there's also it's injuries are just a part of the game, right? And Dalton Sneed was banged up in those games down the stretch of the regular season. Montana State still beat Montana 48-14 without who?
Yeah,
Troy Anderson.
Yep.
So one team has a banged up quarterback who's still playing. The other one's got the best player in the league, and he's out. So, I don't know. There's all sorts of different factors that go into all this. Alex Caressa, also worth mentioning. I thought just in terms of the intangibles of playing quarterback, being sort of a field general at Portland State, he was really, really good. Sort of announced his presence to the world. He barely won that quarterback job coming out of camp. And then he goes and beats Washington State in his very first start, Bruce Barnum's very first game as a head coach. And they roll up 9 victories. They should have won the Big Sky title if they wouldn't have lost by 1 point to Southern Utah. They'd probably get 10 victories and a top 10 or a top 4 seed, And only FCS team to ever win 2 FBS games in the same season. Caressa's numbers are fine, but if you watched him, you realize how much control he had over games. He's just kind of your quintessential field general, little scat back type quarterback that can run and gun.
He made their team better. He's a good player. He needed the eye test. He wasn't a guy that you could really watch from afar or even just watch casually and understand it. Once you were around him, once you saw it, once you saw his demeanor, especially his ability to motivate people and just be a cool cat, he was kind of that quintessential quarterback, and I'll remember him forever. I mean, that team was really good, and I think he was a huge part of it. Chris Brown at Cal Poly, he was the
smooth operator.
He was a smooth operator. He was also the most hard-nosed of their quarterbacks that they've had. They've had some really good ones. Andre Brodus led them to a share of the Big Sky title in 2012.
Chris Brown's a dog.
Daniel Graves was probably the guy that was the slickest with the ball in terms of getting it in, getting it out, pitching it.
Yeah.
Chris Brown would just call his own number on the option.
sometimes maybe even more than he should. But I mean, he could carry the ball 29 times in a game.
And he could truck you. He could also glide. Like he had a nice stride to him. Yeah.
Nobody wanted to play those Cal Poly teams.
No, he's a good player.
To be able to run the triple option and also be able to keep up with the Eastern Washingtons of the world in shootouts is a pretty good testament. The flaw of that style, there's several flaws, but the flaw of it was they'd always get so busted up. Nobody wanted to play them, and then they'd get to the end of the year and they'd just be a shell of themselves.
I see zero flaws with the triple option. The only flaw that there is injuries. That's it. And then guess what? That's a personal problem. So I think the triple option is one of the most perfect things on earth. It's in fact perfect.
If you make the right read,
if it's perfect, it's perfect.
You can't beat it.
You can't beat it.
It will beat you. It will stay. The triple option will stay ahead of you if the perfect read is made. It's just humans aren't perfect. You can't operate it perfectly. But if you did, you can't beat it.
And for being a triple option quarterback, a little bit unorthodox as far as, he could throw the ball a little bit too. And he's just a flossy athlete and good player.
Yeah, interesting that how many guys have come out of that neck of the woods. Chris Murray was from that same area, that Lawndale, Inglewood type of area.
Yeah.
It's a great recruiting area for the Big Sky because you got all the California schools, all the big schools, they recruit all these prep schools, the St. John Bosco Preps, the Mater Days, the Juniper Cerros,
go get some public school kids.
The Trinity, exactly, man. Go to Lawndale High School. You're going to find a quarterback. I don't know if he can throw it that polished, but man, is he going to be tough? Man, is he going to be fast? I mean, there's been a bunch of dudes from that area.
Chris Brown is a bigger, beefier, more polished version of Chris Murray. I kind of like that comp.
Man, Chris Murray almost kind of deserves to be on here, only because Chris Murray had like such a roller coaster of a career. He didn't win that many games, but all the games he won were such big games. There's no player with a bigger dichotomy between like good and bad. Like, remember the game when they played South Dakota State?
I remember them all.
The game when they played South Dakota State in Bozeman in the non-conference, and dude threw for like 300 and rushed for like 150, and you're like, whoa, he did it. He figured it out. And then like threw for 76 yards against Weber and 14 yards against Portland State, whatever.
Yeah.
But big games, Chris Murray was ready to roll.
Where did he transfer?
Nowhere. Home.
That's right. He went
Mom's
home.
house.
Poor dude. Chris Murray, if you're listening, you were a baller.
So fun to watch. Also, Chris Murray, if you're listening, they should have helped you more.
Yep.
You just got to help the kid. You just got to help him. You just got to get him. You got to get him to class. Just got to get him there. Justin Arias, another young man worth mentioning. Not a young man anymore. He's a business owner in Pocatello. He runs one of the breweries there in town.
I think he was a business owner in college. He feels like he's been 40 for a long time.
Pretty mature guy.
Mature.
Pretty smooth operator. I would say that
could chuck it.
The two teams
could absolutely chuck it.
That if one moment in one game goes a different way, we remember everything about those teams differently. They both were in 2014. It was the 2014 Idaho State Bengals and the 2014 Sacramento State Hornets. Idaho State lost on one of the coldest games that's ever been played in Bozeman. I was doing the radio sideline announcing.
That's right.
I had every piece of ski gear I ever owned on, trying to get the radio machine run through so I could do the sidelines.
Oh, man.
Chad Newell had an unforgettable game in that game. He had like 30-something carries on a backward knee. He was so busted up, and he grinded it out. And Montana State grinded Idaho State out. It was Mike Kramer's best Idaho State team, and Montana State beat them by a whisker. And that Montana State team went to the playoffs, and that Idaho State team did not. That Sac State team lost 59-56 to Montana State in Sacramento, and then also lost a 56-53 shootout to Eastern Washington. They win either of those, they're a playoff team. They win both of those, they're a playoff seed. And we're talking about Sac State way earlier than their rise when Troy Taylor took the head job. So Justin Arias, who's the quarterback of that 2014 Idaho State team, deserves mentioning. He was a Walter Payton Award finalist, super efficient, hummed the ball, had some great weapons around him, but that was Kramer's best team at Idaho State. Justin Arias was a huge part of that.
He has on this list, which we will get to the most, the number one, he has the second purest arm on this list.
Yes, right, for sure. The other guy worth mentioning, because I just mentioned that 2014 Sac State team, is Garrett Safrod. He was a guy that could scoot, he could run a gun.
Yeah,
he was that guy that could get you 300, 100.
Yeah.
Certainly really impressive there. And moving on, Giovanni McCoy, he only played 2 years in the league, so that probably kept him out of the top five, but he was a national award winner, as the Jerry Rice Award winner his freshman year at Idaho, first team all-conference last year. In terms of being able to fit into what your your coach wants you to do, but then also be yourself and sort of improvise. He did that as good as anybody on this countdown.
Yeah, another baller up there as far as the true ballers go. We're going to get to a couple. Obviously, the top guys are right there. But as far as just, I always call him, he's out there hooping, man. Like guys like him, it's a different thing. And the level of confidence, the level of development, game to game, just got better every second he was playing college football. And he's a good player.
Kevin Thompson, a super-duper senior at Sacramento State, but he was certainly a huge catalyst as Sac won their first Big Sky title ever in 2019. That Sac State team announced their presence as a title contender by going to Eastern Washington and winning, beating Montana in Sacramento, and then going to Montana State.
3 weeks in a row, right?
3 weeks in a row. Only team in the history of the league to beat those three teams 3 weeks in a row, and that was when Eastern had not started their fall. Eastern had played the national championship game the year before.
Yep.
Montana State was on the rise. Montana was good. That was the first better team under Bobby Houck, and Kevin Thompson was a huge catalyst in that.
Yeah, he's a good player and super efficient. I mean, his stats were insane. He was throwing at like 74% completion, and I mean, really, really efficient player.
Jake Mayer, the best quarterback in the Division I era for sure at UC Davis. He led Davis to their lone conference title when they shared it in 2018. Won a playoff game. And he still plays professionally. He plays up in the Canadian Football League.
Yep.
Really smart guy, really well-polished guy. Just sort of the quintessential pro quarterback, right? Like he was a pro his whole college career, and that's why he's still a pro here today.
Yeah, pro style, and I think if you were to put it in, like a machine that said spit out what a perfect quarterback would look like, it's kind of like him.
Last honorable mention guy, and this guy gets hurt only because he's the third best of his own school. So that's a little bit of I
think it's just our top six.
Spoiler
He would
alert.
be on the list. It's just he's the third best of his school.
That's right. It's Eric Berrier at Eastern Washington. Berrier also, he peaked earlier in his career. I don't know if you hold that against guys or not, but he had his best year, and Eastern Washington had their best year in Berrier's sophomore year.
Right.
So he also had a great senior year, and they beat Montana in Eastern, but then they came to Montana in the playoffs and lost. That was a tough draw that year in terms of the bracket. Like that should have probably been a game that was a week later. Should have been a Final Eight game, not a second round game, because those were probably two top, I don't know, 8 or 10 or even 12 teams. Either way, I thought that the regionality of it really hurt them. But either way, Berrier can spin it. He can drop it in the bucket. He's a gamer.
He ran early in his career and then stopped running.
Yes.
That was a little bit. But I mean, his senior year, he threw for 5,000 yards and 45 touchdowns. I mean,
yeah, he's the last great one at Eastern Washington.
Eric Berrier, you know this, man. Your picture here, you look like a little kid.
Yep. Gamer, though, man.
I didn't know he was in the CFL.
Yeah, he is.
That's awesome. Good for him.
Where's he from? He's from somewhere in SoCal, too, right?
Inglewood.
There you go. Another guy from that area.
Yep.
Inglewood Ballers. All right, number 5 on our list. Skyline at 10. Top 5 quarterbacks of the last 10 years. It's probably presented by Cash One Pawn. Cash One Pawn, the premier pawn shop in western Montana. You shop online anytime. Extensive inventory of power tools, firearms, CashOnePawn.com.
What is a jewelry design center?
JDC is a family-owned business with deep roots in Montana. Why Montana? Because this community made us. Made us family, made us artisans, made us believe in love, made us hometown heroes. Because this community made us shine. Why Montana? Because Montana is home.
Cash One Pawn has the most extensive inventory of any pawn shop in western Montana. Whether you're in the market for firearms, power tools, bows, video game consoles, or sunglasses, Cash One Pawn is the best deals around. And now Cash One Pawn gives you the ability to shop online from anywhere. Make CashOnePawn.com part of your shopping habits. Also make sure to download the Cash One Pawn app. Cash One Pawn, Missoula's premier pawn shop, located on Roller Coaster Road on the way to the Y. Number 5. And this is a story that still has at least half a chapter, if not one more chapter, to be written. And if he continues on the pace he is currently on, he might just go mess around and win the Walter Payton Award. And if that's the case, then that vaults him into the top 3, if not maybe the number 1 spot, just depending on how Montana State finishes their season. But we got Tommy Mellott sitting there at number 5. Tommy, I think, gets the nod over a couple of those other guys just because of his sustained winning. Right now, he's 28-7 as the starting quarterback at Montana State. Montana State's won 32 games since Tommy Mellott took over as the starter. He also didn't start 4 of those games. That's where the difference comes. But as a starter, 28-7. The Montana State record for wins is 30, so he's creeping up on Denarius McGee. The Big Sky record for wins is 36, so he's creeping up on Vernon Adams as well. If things go according to plan, Mellott will be either right there or the winningest quarterback in the history of the league. And he's done it in a completely different way than a very many guys, and you also seen him evolve over his career as well. He's had peaks and valleys, but he's certainly in the midst of a peak at this exact moment.
He's absolutely peaking. Best statistical season of his career by a lot was what he'll finish with. But Colter, I mean, right now, as it stands, he's got 8 games left, at least 7 games.
Well, they have
6.
5 regular season games,
It's only 5,
because they're 7-0, 12-game season.
Gotcha.
But you're definitely got at least a playoff game,
if not 2.
Like Montana State's gonna. I don't know how they're gonna finish, but they're gonna win at least 2 more games, so that's gonna get you at least 2 more playoff games, I would say.
Yep.
So yeah, he's got 7 games left at least, and if things go how they want it to go, he'll have 9 games left.
Yep, he's scored over 70 touchdowns. He has over 7,250 yards. He has a 75-yard touchdown in every season he's played in. He's averaging over 7 yards a carry for his career. And then the winning, and if the eye test, and I always talk about his ability to be diverse.
Yes.
Both running and throwing the football. He really is kind of a 50-50 guy.
Yes.
He only has 6 interceptions ever, and none this season. Ever. Yeah, that's not that many. And 4 were his freshman year.
Yes.
It's like, that's pretty wild. I mean, to hold on to the ball and play winning football like that. I mean, like you said, without one crazy leg injury in the national championship game, that is just pure bad luck. Just pure bad luck. Without that, you never know what happens in that game. And then, like you said,
you also never know what happens in the quarterfinals last year against North Dakota State.
He could just go mess around and win the Peyton, like you said. So I think there's a lot to be said for just the mentality of bringing the hard hat and playing winning football and continuing to take a program that had started to grow, rather peak in a really, really positive way, and then to double down and peak at like literally twice the level. I mean, to try to follow someone like Troy Anderson and all of the legacy that those teams built, and then to lean into it even more and get better, make your teams better, pretty much as not a one-man show, but the leader of this offense, at the very least. Talking about lots of memorable for a lot of reasons.
Number 4 on our list, Skyline at 10, top 5 quarterbacks of the last 10 years.
Who's our eye test guy?
I would say this is I think he's the best money for a ticket. I think he's the most spectacular athlete, and that's saying a lot because Tommy Mellott is a spectacular athlete.
So is Troy.
So is Troy Anderson. It's Dakota Prukop, and Prukop is our Tyler Hall of the quarterbacks countdown. You have to throw out the
7-5
the
record.
statistical measures, man. I mean, Dakota Prukop was only 2 games above 500 as a quarterback. He also had the most god-awful defense that I've really seen in the Big Sky during the Skyline era on the other side. I mean, when Dakota Prukop threw for like 350 and rushed for 150 against Portland State, and Montana State lost by 2 touchdowns, even though they scored 42 points, that sort of summed it all up. I mean, that team led the country in scoring. Prukop had this stretch his junior year, which actually was his better year. I guess it was his sophomore year because he transferred his senior year. His first year as a starter, he had this stretch where he freaked all the way out. He had like 500 yards of offense 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
When they went to Sac and they won 59-56, and then they went to Davis and they won 77-37. The Tim Cramsey offense was rolling. We could do a whole podcast on those teams, why that didn't go well, whose fault and whose fault it wasn't. The fact of the matter is Dakota Prukop still plays professional football. He got scapegoated at Oregon as well because Mark Hilfrich was coaching for his job, and then they decided to go with a young guy named Justin Herbert, who ended up being the number 6 overall pick in the NFL draft. But Prukop, pound for pound, talent-wise, is he's as talented and as dual threat as anybody we've covered.
Yeah, he'd be a first team all league, or he'd be an all league candidate at running back alone. He went back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with back-to-back 13 touchdowns, 10 rushing touchdowns. I mean, going 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns is definitely no slouch. There's not a lot of teams that have losing records that have 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns at quarterback. It's not common, I don't think.
It's definitely not
so much juice.
common.
And such a pro. The mentality that he had coming up here from Texas and then having to compete for jobs and ended up winning the job, and not everyone knew who he was or what he was all about. And I think he made his mark day one. The first time you ever saw him, you say, oh, wow. And then it never really stopped.
Is he the most photogenic player in Skyline Sports history?
I always say, man, I take good photos of good games and I take good photos of good players. And
he's one of them.
He's right up there. I would say just because of his body and the way he looks, he's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Skyline at 10, top 5 quarterbacks of the last 10 years. Treasure State University of Montana football is a way of life. Lithia Ford has long been a proud sponsor of Grizz football, and Lithia Ford of Missoula is thrilled to have several of the best Montana football seniors driving the best trucks in Montana. Aspen Sound is the premier car audio and accessory shop in Montana. Aspen Sound makes sure the boys are riding in style with tinted windows and state-of-the-art stereo systems. There's always a party in Montana. Whether you're going to a concert, a wedding, or a football game, the Montana Party Bus will get you there. Skyline Sports and ESPN MT cover the Big Sky with more depth than anyone. Check out SkylineSportsMT.com and tune in to Nuanez now on 102.9 ESPN Missoula every day. My Montana Roots and Wear Your Roots clothing is your go-to spot for the most unique and comfortable lifestyle clothing you'll find anywhere. And get your custom t-shirts to support your favorite player. From 5 local businesses who love Montana, best of luck to the Grizz as they pursue another Big Sky Conference championship.
Five Valleys Restoration, your view is our view. And what a beautiful view it is. We are proud to be locally owned, locally operated. We love our community here in Missoula and also the full 5 valleys that we do service. We give back to the community, we service our community. Our kids go to school here, we live here, we play here.
Probably presented by Jewelry Design Center. Jewelry Design Center wants to be your jeweler for life, no matter what you can imagine, no matter what you can envision. Jewelry Design Center can design it, make it, create it for you. Check them out online or check them out in Missoula, 2501 Brook Street, across from the Montana Club. Jewelry Design Center, your jeweler for life. Number 3 on our list of top 5 quarterbacks of the last 10 years, the Big Sky Conference.
This is a top 3 is a whole different level, Colter.
Yeah, top 3 is a whole different level. These guys are the 3 most talented guys, I'd say. The next guy is the most prolific, at least in terms of a single season, and sort of actually redefined the metrics of what we gauge by, because I just think that a lot of the stuff that Gage Gubrud and the Eastern Washington offense did is never going to be replicated. Part of that's just because defenses have figured out how to play against these spread-type offenses, but also there's just never going to be an offensive duo in the coaching booth like Bo Baldwin and Troy Taylor. Like, those guys were on the same staff. Troy Taylor was in his first and only year as the offensive coordinator at Eastern Washington in 2016. Gage Gubrud had 3 NFL receivers, including a future Hall of Famer in Cooper Kupp to throw to. Also Kendrick Bourne, who still starts for the New England Patriots, and Shaq Hill, who played for the Tampa Bay Bucks for a couple years. And Gubrud just utterly lit it up, man. He could move and groove. He could run a lot better than a lot of people gave him credit for, and he threw for 10 million yards and dozens and dozens and dozens of touchdowns.
8,568 yards.
How much was his 2016? 5,500?
5,160.
Yeah, how many touchdowns?
48 of them.
48 touchdowns, and he also rushed for 600 plus. And
606 with an additional 5 touchdowns.
There you go. So 50 plus touchdowns, Walter Payton finalist. That team set the Big Sky record for first downs by like 200. they scored and scored and scored some more. I mean, Kupp had numbers that looked like he was a ball hog, and they still had 2 other guys that were either close to or had 1,000+ yards in Bourne and Hill. Quincy Forte was also a great running back. Like, that was just such a prolific offense. But Gubrud was the mechanism of it all. And that 2016 Eastern team was our number one team on our countdown, even though they did not win or even play in the national championship game. And you just have to wonder, we remember them so well no matter what, but if they just don't lose that game to Youngstown State at home in the semifinals of the playoffs, pretty much all of these lists would just be dominated by guys from and that specific team. And they already are, even with that loss.
Yep, no doubt. I mean, those are huge stats in the eye test. I mean, he could fling it. And like you said, he ran well that year. I mean, the year before, didn't play quite as much. The year after, didn't run it as much. I think that's a trend at Eastern is you have these massive years and you got to reel it in somehow. Otherwise, it's just, I don't know if it's you can't duplicate it.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, for his career, over 9,000 yards and 85 touchdowns. I mean, these are huge numbers. But this is kind of, not to go backwards, but this is why the Tommy Mellott thing resonates for me big time, is because he has 6, 7, 8 games in front of him still, and has as many touchdowns as Gage Gubrud does in his career. You know, and you're like, but no, Gubrud has the most touchdowns ever. He threw for 50. Yeah, he's got about 80 touchdowns, and that's kind of where these guys are sitting. So you got to imagine, though.
Gubrud also had to sit behind a certain young man who we'll talk about momentarily.
That season, though, 53 tutties, 570 pass attempts.
Yes.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
That's chucking it.
The way they were doing it, too, like the stuff they ran is like I've never seen anybody run it before or since. And part of it's because you have such a talent advantage.
Yeah. It's on offense, insane.
But the way that they were like pressing, you talk about the field and the boundary.
Sure.
The way that they would, like most conventional wisdom, you're on the right hash. So the wide side of the field is to the left. So you're flooding everything to the wide side of the field. It gives you more space. Even more ideally, if you have a right-handed quarterback, you're on the left hash. You're flooding everything to the right side so the quarterback can roll to his right, throw on the run. They would jam it up and run like trip stack on the field side.
Short side, boundary side.
And kill you.
Yeah.
Because what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Oh, you take away the under, you take away the middle. Oh, there goes Shaq Hill. He's gone.
It's over, yeah.
Oh, you take away the under. Oh, there's Kendrick Bourne on the skinny post. That's a 30-yard gain. Oh, you take away those two guys. Well, then Kupp is just roaming around wherever he wants to go. He's just breaking you off, and then Gubrud could just keep it alive and throw a dart. Troy Taylor, I'm so interested to see if he gets it going at Stanford.
He's the head coach at Stanford because of this season.
Well, and because of Sac State.
Of course, but like it's all one and the same.
Sure.
Like
right.
it hasn't changed for Troy Taylor since then.
I know, it's just amazing that he's never had as good of players to run this stuff with.
But once you can see it all, it's just like anyone. You go on an amazing trip and you get a vision,
right.
Or you get mentored by an amazing.
Yeah.
Once you get this on paper, then you're like, I can maybe duplicate it.
That's right. But like how many colleges have had 2 starting NFL wide receivers as their receivers, like LSU does every year or whatever.
Eastern
does. Against Big Sky corners.
And Kendrick Bourne's the real deal.
Oh, he's the real deal, man. He's right at this exact moment, he's more productive than Kupp because Kupp's been hurt so much the last couple of years.
Kendrick Bourne's the real deal.
He's absolutely the real deal. You know, he almost went to Montana.
I did know that. I think he said it one time in a press conference.
Yeah. He used to be one of our favorite podcast guests.
He's great.
Maybe we'll bring him back around.
Hope he still has his grill in. He's rocking out, man. I love Kendrick Bourne.
I love Kendrick Bourne as well. Big Sky Breakdown, Skyline at 10. Presented by Town Pump. Town Pump, Brawl the Wild by the mile. Back yet again. It took us to and from Bozeman this last weekend. Got a couple more road trips coming up, and we couldn't do it without Town Pump. I went to the new. Have you seen the newest? You haven't been over to Bozeman
Oh, I have.
The new Town Pump on Huffine.
Oh, I know all about it, man.
33,000 square feet.
Correct. 115 pumps.
Up like 100 employees. I read.
Largest gas station not in Texas.
They got a cafe. They got a sports bar. They got a casino.
The beer cooler?
I mean, every beer that you could ever have. Like, they have all of the beers. They have it there at the Town Pump there on Huffine and Bozeman.
It's amazing, and it's quite the production. But also really cool that they continue to push the envelope and build food stores like that.
It's become like the new hangout spot before Bobcat games.
Totally,
because everybody can just congregate right there. You can hang out at the bar, watch some morning games, and then I can get my beer and my snacks. Now we're going to the tailgate, man. It's like on the Bozeman Reddit. It's like, who wants to go meet up before the Cat game at the Town Pump? It's great.
They're
gathering place.
They're taking it from, and we'll have to get someone from Town Pump to reference this better. They're taking it from a gas station chain that's in Texas, I believe. That is it has like the best restaurant, the best barbecue place. And there are famous places like that where you got to go to this the Double Pump. That's where the barbecue is. You're like, the gas station?
Yeah, but it's great. Town Pump, Montana's best for more than 6 decades. Number 2 on our list. This guy's the best pure quarterback that we've seen in the Big Sky Conference. You could see it the very first time we ever watched him play. His teams were good and probably not as good as maybe you'd want them to be. There's a lot that goes into that. But he himself, he just threw the ball better than anybody in terms of just 1, 2, 3, 4, drop back, throw the ball. There's nobody did it like Case Cookus.
Like you said it, Colter. I'm trying to think of a comp in a different sport for those who may not be as familiar or thought he was maybe not this guy, but he is as the most pro guy that we've seen in this league. I mean, maybe a couple offensive linemen.
He's Jared Goff.
I'm not going to say he's better than Jared Goff, but yes, he's Jared Goff.
He throws the ball like
Very
Jared
similar,
Goff, except for he has better velocity.
He's bigger.
And he's bigger.
Just a bigger body type. Same length, but just a little bit of bigger body type. God, he can chuck the ball.
An unbelievable story, too, because he was like a non-recruit out of high school. He played like tight end at some weird junior college. They threw him in there at quarterback because they needed somebody. And they're like, oh my gosh, this guy spins it. And then Northern Arizona took a flyer on him. And then boom, he's the National Freshman of the Year in 2015. First team all-conference at least 2 more times after that.
At least 2 more times.
NIU hasn't made the playoffs since Case Cookus left, and Case Cookus also still playing pro. In fact, he won a UFL championship last year with the Philadelphia Stars, I believe.
His freshman year, true freshman, 69% completion percentage, 3,100 yards, 37 touchdowns, 5 picks.
Yep. And that's when they had Emmanuel Butler, who was a really transcendent talent as well. That season was so good, it got Tim Plow a new job, and then Plow went up the ranks and then ended up at Boise State, and then he came back to the Big Sky at UC Davis, which is his alma mater. Now he's the head coach there at UC Davis. And then Cookus had multiple offensive coordinators, and that sometimes it sputters the way that a guy goes, but he was always good throughout it. And again, so many of the reasons why they didn't win more. They won plenty at NAU when he was the quarterback, but so many reasons why they didn't win more. Had a lot to do with stuff that was outside of his control, but it's just in terms of throwing the ball and putting it on a dime. Cookus was the best.
He has thrown for over 12,000 yards and 105 touchdowns. 6 rushing touchdowns.
Skyline at 10. Our top 5 quarterbacks of the last 10 years. Probably presented in part by Canby Tap House. I went to a great wine event put on by George's Distributing, one of Brooks's company, a couple weeks ago. It was awesome. 5-course meal, like tapas style, with a different wine taster on each one of them. It was awesome. And we'll let you know about upcoming wine events like that. When's the next Taylor Swift one?
November 12th.
November 12th. So if you want to go listen to Taylor Swift music with a bunch of Swifties and eat some great food and drink some great wine, visit Canby Tap House's website, canbymt.com. And also stay tuned here on the Big Sky Breakdown for more promotions of all this stuff. Number 1 on the list. I don't think this is a surprise given what we've talked about leading up to this and what our top teams were and our top 10 teams of the last decade. I think there's no one that struck fear into the hearts of opponents quite like Vernon Adams. I watched Vernon Adams completely cut the heart out of the Grizzlies in Missoula, completely cut the heart out of the Bobcats in Bozeman. He won big game after big game. His team stalled out in the late rounds of the playoffs too. You have to wonder what would have happened if they could have just won one more game. Like if they could have beat Illinois State, they could have beat Townsend, and they could have got a shot at NDSU. What would have happened? Because you had Cup in his early days, Bourne in his early days, and as good as Gubrud is, Vernon Adams is better. He stares down the gun barrel and can execute against pressure better than any quarterback I've ever covered. He can get out on the edge and do it. And more than anything, though, he's got the mindset, man. He's got that FU mentality. He does not care whatsoever. He is as swaggy and as cocky and as arrogant as he could possibly be, and I mean that all the best ways, and that's why he's still balling up north, up in the CFL.
You ready for the stats?
I'm ready.
For his career total, I'm going to include rushing, which is 1,300. He's got 16,000 yards.
16,000.
And 150 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think those are probably Big Sky records. Yeah, 16,000 yards is pretty good. Here's the thing. He didn't even play his last year until at Eastern Washington. He played at Oregon.
Yeah, he sure did. So
and he also split time his first year.
His first year splitting time, he went 2020, His second year as the man, 5,000 yards, 55 touchdowns, ran for 605 and 4. And then his junior year, he goes for 3,535 touchdowns with another 300 on the ground and 6 touchdowns.
And then he went to Oregon, and they made it to a bowl game.
Went to Oregon, threw for 2,726 touchdowns, ran for another 150 and a couple of scores.
Amazing.
They went 7-3. He went 35-9 in his career.
35-9, all-time winningest quarterback in the history of the Big Sky Conference.
Only played 4 years.
Yep.
A lot of these guys, like the Cookus, several, and Gubrud.
The 35 wins counts his Oregon wins, though? Okay, so he's not the all-time winner in Big Sky Conference.
28 Big Sky
28 wins, same as Tommy Mellott. So actually, Daenerys, I got to text Daenerys because Daenerys was asking me about this
if he's the all-time.
The other week. He really wants to know if he is.
What is it? 30?
Daenerys won 30 games.
30.
Yep, 30.
So if he started all 4 years, that's 8 a year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if and when Tommy Mellott breaks that. I think he's gonna.
Man, I think you will too. You said he has 28.
For those that are wondering about Dave Dickinson didn't start till he was a sophomore. So
3 years and you win 10 wins. And
Dave had a bunch of wins.
Yeah. Playoffs might have been shorter then.
Playoffs were certainly 2 rounds shorter than.
Yeah, right.
Well, 16 teams instead of 24 teams, but if there was no bye,
it's still hard to get to 10 wins. Yeah, so you're not going to get to 30.
Yeah. Big Sky Breakdown, Skyline Sports, MT.com. The other thing is that Dickinson's team, they lost to Delaware his junior year, 94, in the first round. So that cost them some games.
There's 2 extras, yeah.
Then they went on the great run in 95, obviously, where they had several extra games.
I think he's okay with his legacy and where his football life is. I think Dave probably is like, you know what, things worked out.
Things definitely worked out. Awesome, fun countdown. We'll have our top 10 offensive players that aren't quarterbacks next week. And then actually, let's go defensive guys next week and then offensive guys that aren't quarterbacks the week after that. Thanks to Up Top Clothing. Shop teamuptop.com. Use Skyline 15 at checkout for a discount. Also thanks to Cash One Pawn, the premier pawn shop in Western Montana. Town Pump, keeping us fueled up all season long. The Jewelry Design Center, who wants to be your jeweler for life. And all of our other great supporters that help us bring you daily content on the Big Sky Breakdown podcast series, the Skyline Sports YouTube channel, and everything else in between. For Brooks Nuanez, I'm Colter Nuanez. Skyline at 10. Thanks so much for helping us celebrate. We'll have a new one next week. We'll have Big Sky Breakdowns every single day, all football season long. Skyline Sports every day, every season.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Town